Imagine being told, with a straight face, that something as invisible as the sugar in your tea or the air in your lungs quietly shapes your destiny. Now imagine someone saying it isn't your horoscope, not your Enneagram, not even your MBTI, just the fluid moving through your veins. Some part of you resists. Another part leans closer, because if there were a code so basic and undeniable, a key stamped into your cells, it would promise a kind of relief. Finally, a reason why you feel different in rooms where other people seem comfortable. Finally, a pattern to your choices, your loves, your conflicts. Tonight we're going to sit with that impulse, the longing for a clean explanation, and test it against what Jung teaches us about symbols, projection, and the deep work of becoming a whole human being. The title says the meaning of your blood type will change your entire life. The truth you'll walk away with is gentler and more dangerous. The meaning you give to your blood type can change your life if you understand what you are doing with that meaning. Here's the promise for the next half hour. We'll begin with the basic idea people carry when they talk about blood types and personality. We'll examine where this belief lives culturally and psychologically and why it's sticky. We'll place it beside Jung's ideas: projection, the shadow, archetypes, individuation, and see what happens when a biological label becomes a mirror for the psyche. And then we'll move from theory to practice. You'll be able to use this fascination with blood types as a ritual, a tool for self-inquiry, a doorway rather than a prison. You'll get language to explain the pull of simple labels, a technique to keep yourself from shrinking to them, and a small experiment to try this week. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. If you're new here, I'm glad you found this corner of the internet where we trade hot takes for depth and quick certainty for honest seeing. If you want more episodes like this, calm, precise, grounded in Jungian psychology, yet faithful to ordinary life, subscribe to the Deep Psyche Lab channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. And if you already know this is your kind of place, take a moment to like the video. It's a small gesture that genuinely helps us reach the exact kind of thoughtful people you'd want sitting beside you in this conversation. Now, what do people mean when they say blood type has meaning? In some cultures, especially in parts of East Asia, there's a popular folklore that different ABO blood types correspond to different personality tendencies. It's not a medical claim, it's a folk psychology, a language of types. You've heard the way it goes. This type is responsible or precise, that one is spontaneous or passionate, another is social and caring, another principled and stubborn. You can find versions of this everywhere: office gossip, dating profiles, pop magazines. You might even have heard it growing up at the dinner table. Ah, you do that because you're an O. It's tidy, it's memorable, and crucially, it gives people a way to explain behavior without an argument. With one word, we can assign both a trait and a fate. The appeal is obvious. Jung would tell you to pay attention to two things when a culture invests in a typology like this. First, notice that the typology functions symbolically, even if it claims to be biological. Second, notice what the symbol allows the group to do. A symbol, in Jung's sense, is not a sign that points to a single fixed meaning. It's a living image that carries multiple layers of meaning, including unconscious ones. Blood is one of those primordial symbols. It conjures life, kinship, sacrifice, guilt, purity, and danger. It carries the memory of the hunt and the altar, the hospital and the oath, the family and the feud. Even if you and I say blood type in a sterile, clinical way, our deeper imagination hears the essence of who I am. Now imagine linking that ancient symbol to everyday personality. Suddenly we have a technology for identity that feels as old as a hearth fire and as clean as a lab report. Here's where I ask you to do something small that will shape the rest of how you hear this. Wherever you're listening from, consider your own blood type if you know it, or imagine one if you don't. Notice the trait story you've heard attached to it, and now notice how you feel toward that story. Do you feel pride, a little superiority, as if you belong to a noble house? Do you feel irritation, as if you've been put in a box you didn't ask for? Do you feel relief, there's a reason I am the way I am? Or do you feel wary, don't tell me who I am? That feeling is more important than the factual label. It reveals your relationship to typologies in general. If the feeling is warm, you might be hungry for a lineage, a banner to carry. If the feeling is tight, you might be defending your right to be complex. Either way, what you're sensing is not the meaning of a blood type. It is your psyche's reaction to a symbol. Jung knew that the psyche is not content to live in a vacuum. It wants images, stories, categories, containers into which it can pour its energy and through which it can make sense of itself. That is why he developed psychological types. Not blood types, but types of consciousness, orientations of interest and evaluation. When Jung talks about introversion and extroversion, or about thinking and feeling, sensation and intuition, he isn't saying the body's chemistry dictates your fate. He's describing typical preferences in how a person orients to life. The key word is preference, not destiny. Your blood, by contrast, becomes a symbol people recruit to do the heavy lifting of destiny. But your psyche is clever. It can take any symbol at hand and use it as a mirror, which means we can work with the symbol, provided we don't let it work us. There is an ethical edge here. Many people carry a painful history of being reduced by illness, by prejudice, by a family who could only see one part of them. When you've been reduced, you become exquisitely sensitive to reduction in any form. So if someone tosses off "you're such a typical X type," and it stings, it might not be about blood type at all. It might be your whole nervous system remembering what it feels like to have your complexity collapsed. Hold that with care. The project of individuation, Jung's term for becoming a distinct, integrated self, requires that we let ourselves be layered, sometimes even contradictory. Paradox is a feature, not a glitch. If blood type talk helps you notice a tendency you want to refine, use it. If it becomes a cage that denies your paradox, drop it. There's another reason blood type meaning is sticky. It offers a quick fix for the anxiety of unpredictability in relationships. When someone behaves in a way you can't understand, the unknown floods your body with alertness. A label empties the unknown. If I can say, "She did that because she's this type," I can relax a little. I don't have to renegotiate the entire map of how the world works. But the relief has a cost. Instead of staying curious about the actual person in front of me, I relate to a category. Jung would call that relating through a complex, a cluster of emotionally charged associations that hijacks perception. The moment a complex is constellated, you see what fits it and filter out what doesn't. If I'm convinced your blood type means you're unreliable, every time you show up 5 minutes late, the complex lights up. And every time you show up 5 minutes early, it stays dark. Complexes don't gather data, they win confirmation. Let me offer a simple picture. Imagine a clear glass bottle with a label on it. C. The label is neat and the font is beautiful. You place the bottle on a shelf and feel proud of your small ocean. Then, on a rainy day, you take the bottle down and hold it up to the window, and you notice it contains nothing but air. At first you feel foolish. Then you realize the label helped you keep something in reach. The word sea was never the water. It was your promise to yourself that one day you would go and stand where the horizon is a knife and the light changes the skin of the world. Blood type labels might be the same. They keep something in reach, a hope that identity can be both ancient and simple. The task is to go to the water. Jung invites us toward water by turning us back to our own images and our own behavior. He would ask, what do you project into the label? Projection, in his language, is the process by which we see our inner content, especially disowned traits in other people or in objects. It's not a moral failure. It's the mind's way of making the invisible visible. If I'm proud of being organized, and I secretly despise the part of me that gets messy, I might project that despised mess onto a type I don't belong to. Then I get to feel superior and safe. If I'm ashamed of being needy, I might project hyper-independence onto my blood type and celebrate it as hardwiring. The meaning of the label then becomes a screen onto which I can place what I refuse to greet in myself. The work is to notice the screen and walk around to meet what's behind it. Now, because we are concrete creatures, let's practice. Take the most flattering belief you hold about your type. Maybe you've been told your group is generous or brave or creative. Ask yourself quietly and without performance how you learned to be that way. Name one memory from your actual life that trained that trait. Maybe it was a parent who modeled generosity and you grew up soaking in the warmth of their giving. Maybe it was poverty and generosity became your answer to scarcity. Maybe it was fear and bravery was your way of not becoming small. Suddenly the blood type is not the cause. It's a frame around a living painting. The painting is yours.
You can touch up the color.
You can smudge and repaint. Now take the least flattering belief about your type. Maybe people say you're stubborn or aloof. Ask yourself where the stubbornness protects you. Ask how aloofness keeps you safe from a kind of intimacy that once hurt. The trait loosens and reveals its original purpose. You may keep the behavior or you may revise it. Either way, you are no longer the prisoner of a word. Because we're building a culture of honest exploration here, I'll say the quiet thing out loud. The body does matter, but not as a tyrant. It matters as a theater. Your nervous system has a temperament. Your hormones have seasons. Your diet, sleep, exposure to light, and social rhythms color your mood and attention. If someone notices a pattern, people with this blood type in our community often seem like this. They're noticing something, but not necessarily the thing they think they're noticing. They may be mistaking a cultural training for a chemical truth, or a self-fulfilling story for a discovery. In a group where the lore says your type is gentle, people raised on that lore will get praised for gentleness and scolded for assertiveness. The praised behavior repeats, the scolded one withers. In 20 years, the lore looks like a fact. Jung's caution is simple and stern. Be slow to turn lore into law. Another piece from Jung that helps here is the shadow, the collection of traits and potentials you disown to protect your identity. If your culture claims your blood type is loyal and steadfast, you might unconsciously push your spontaneity or wanderlust into the shadow. You then wear loyalty like a medal, but grow secretly resentful of people who let themselves try new things. You say they're flaky and you're strong. The unlived part of you, the playful and nomadic one, looks for a side door back into your life. It shows up as envy, as sudden bouts of risk-taking, as an affair with novelty. Jung's medicine is radical and ordinary. Admit you hold both. You can be both steady and change-seeking. You can guard commitments and take a weekend to get lost. When you reclaim the shadowed trait, your relationship to the label softens. You can still enjoy the identity lore gives you, but you won't sacrifice your wholeness to keep it tidy. This whole conversation is really a rehearsal for something larger. How to live among stories about identity without giving your sovereignty away. Blood type just makes the problem vivid. Replace it with any other identity shorthand. Profession, nationality, hometown, zodiac sign, even your favorite philosopher, and the same structure appears. We hunger for categories because we want to be known and to know. We also fear categories because we can get trapped by them. Jung gives us a third path. Use categories as tools for awareness, not as walls. Use them as hypotheses about preference, not sentences about nature. Let them start a conversation. Don't let them end one. If this has already shifted something in you, take a second to help it travel. Like the video, so the algorithm knows there are people who prefer depth over drama. And tell me in the comments the sentence that best describes your new stance. I am more than my label, and I'm curious about my pattern. Or, if you want something shorter and more charged, write, I choose meaning over myth. Reading those comments after we publish is one of my favorite parts of this work. It makes this feel like a room instead of a broadcast. Let's deepen the practical piece. You might be wondering, can I keep the blood type story and still be free? Yes, if you turn it into a symbol that serves your individuation rather than your avoidance. The move looks like this. First, rename the story in your own language. If your type is said to be decisive, you might rename it as I practice commitment. The difference is subtle but essential. Practice implies agency and growth. Second, pair the renamed story with its balancing counterpart. If you practice commitment, you also practice revision. You stay loyal to your choices, and you build checkpoints where new information can be welcomed without shame. Third, ritualize it. When you face a decision, imagine the old label on a shelf and imagine picking up your renamed practice instead. If you want something embodied, hold your wrist where your pulse is and count 5 beats. Blood becomes not a determinant but a metronome. Something inside you keeps time while you choose. One of the most liberating things Jung teaches is that a symbol isn't finished when you define it. A symbol lives. So keep asking your symbol questions. What does blood mean to you today? Maybe it means ancestry, the people and places that gave you your first name and your accent. Maybe it means sacrifice, the things you give up to keep something sacred alive. Maybe it means vitality, your energy when you're aligned. Maybe it means anger, the heat that rises when a boundary is crossed. Depending on your answer, the same label, blood type, will point your attention to very different pieces of your life. The symbol refocuses your gaze like a lens. Today it might bring your father into focus. Tomorrow it might bring your career. Next week it might illuminate your friendships. Let it move. The psyche hates being pinned down like a specimen. Because this channel cares about relationships, let's spend time there. What happens when two people bring their labels into a room? At first, labels reduce friction. You each declare your tendencies and vow to respect them. I'm this type, so I need plans. I'm that type, so I need flexibility. There is kindness in this. But stay alert. Very quickly, a label that was supposed to encourage understanding becomes a veto. I can't do that because I'm this type. You can't expect that because you're that type. The relationship shrinks around the comfort of predictability. Jung would invite you to keep the conversation honest. Instead of, I can't because I'm this type, say, I'm afraid of what will happen if I try. Instead of, you can't expect that because you're that type, say, when you ask that, I feel out of control. Now you're in the human realm, where growth can happen. A label can't apologize. A person can. Another place the symbol gets interesting is vocation. People often want their work to feel like a calling, something that matches their secret shape. A label seems like a shortcut to that match. If I'm this blood type, I'll be good at that. Sometimes that's harmless. It gets people moving, and moving helps them learn. But if you've been disappointed by a job that fit your label and not your life, or if you're stuck because your label seems to disqualify you from what you love, here is your invitation. Close your eyes and remember the smallest task at work that makes you lose track of time. Not the title, not the prestige, not even the pay. The task. Maybe it's arranging physical space so it breathes. Maybe it's writing the sentence that makes a complex idea simple. Maybe it's building systems that reduce friction. This task is closer to your real type than any label. Keep collecting these tasks. Your vocation is a bundle of them, braided. Now I want to turn toward a particular Jungian idea that can feel abstract until you try it. Participation mystique. It is the primitive sense that we are not fully separate from the objects and people around us. In modern life, we pride ourselves on being individuals. And yet in certain moments, at a concert when the crowd moves like a single organism, at a protest when a chant erases the edges of fear, in a family where everyone knows to keep a secret, the old participation returns. Blood as a symbol can intensify this. We feel not only connected to a group, but merged with it. We are this kind of people. At its best, this gives courage. At its worst, it justifies erasing the person who doesn't fit the type. Individuation doesn't refuse belonging. It revises it. It says, I will belong without dissolving. If your label gives you a place at the table, beautiful. Bring your untypical parts to dinner too, because stories can either widen or narrow. I'll give you one more tool to keep yours wide. The phrase, for now. Attach it to any sentence about identity. I tend to act quickly for now. I prefer solitude for now. I struggle to trust for now. The phrase does two jobs. It honors the truth of your present pattern, and it keeps open the possibility of change. Jung understood that the psyche moves in spirals. You revisit the same themes at deeper levels. What feels like a fixed type in your 20s can feel like a seasonal preference in your 40s. What felt like a wound can become a resource. He for now lets you carry your label lightly as you walk the spiral. There's a quiet courage in all of this. It's easier to outsource your self-understanding to a chart. It's easier to throw up your hands and hide behind a clean explanation. But that robs you of resilience. If you declare you are a kind of person who can only function under specific conditions, the world will constantly be your enemy. If you decide you are a human being with preferences who can learn new capacities, the world becomes an adventurous teacher. The first stance is brittle. The second is supple. Take a breath and notice which one your body wants to inhabit. If this is resonating, drop a comment that says, I carry my label lightly. It's a simple sentence that reminds all of us, when we scroll through later, what we're practicing here. And if this episode has supported your reflection, a like really helps other thoughtful people find it. Subscribing to Deep Psyche Lab and tapping the notification bell ensures you meet us here each week for another walk through the labyrinth. Before we close, I want to visit a tender corner, the part of you that wants to belong to something ancient. You might know your grandparents' stories. You might not. You might have a language in your mouth that your ancestors would recognize. You might speak only the language of your present city. A label that invokes blood can feel like a warm return. Let yourself have that warmth, and then let it move into a deeper belonging that doesn't exclude anyone. Belong to your questions. Belong to the values that wake your best attention. Belong to those who make you more courageous, kinder, truer. Belong to your future as much as your past. When you hold belonging this way, any symbol that once tried to shrink you becomes a doorway. And because we are not only minds but creatures whose days fill with decisions. Here's a small experiment you can try over the next 7 days. Each time you catch yourself thinking, "I did that because I'm the kind of person who..." Pause. Ask, what else could also be true here? If you chose avoidance, maybe you also chose rest. If you chose confrontation, maybe you also chose to protect what matters. Write one sentence in a notebook each evening. Today, my label said X, and I discovered why. After a week, you'll have a map not of what defines you, but of how you keep rediscovering yourself under and around the definitions. If you want to amplify the effect, choose one trait you've attributed to your label and practice its opposite on purpose in a safe, low-stakes situation. If your label says you're decisive, practice taking a beat before answering. If your label says you're easygoing, practice voicing a preference. Notice what you learn, not about your blood, but about your freedom. There's a reason this channel keeps returning to Jung. He honors mystery without turning it into magic tricks. He respects the body without confusing anatomy for destiny. He insists we look at where our stories come from, not to shame ourselves, but to gain the kind of clarity that makes compassion possible. When we borrow his eyes for a while, we start noticing how quickly the world tries to sell us shortcuts to identity. Some of those shortcuts are fun. Some are comforting. We can use them as long as we don't let them use us. And if we do get used, that's not a failure. It's a signal. It tells us where to do our next round of honest work. As we begin to wrap, I want to leave you with an image to carry. Picture your inner life as a city at dusk. Lights are clicking on in high windows. Street vendors are packing up. A child is refusing to put on a sweater. Somewhere a musician is playing a scale again and again, looking for the note that makes the whole day make sense. You walk through this city with a small lantern. The label in your pocket can point you towards certain neighborhoods. Here's the district where your caution lives. Here's the square where your bravery dances. Here's the quiet street where your grief folds laundry. But the label can't walk the streets for you. Only you can. You decide where to linger, who to visit, which locked door to knock on. The meaning you give your blood type can be the note the musician finds, the one that helps the melody resolve. But the melody is your life. You are both the composer and the listener. One last gentle reminder before we close. This channel is educational and not a substitute for therapy. If labels have been used against you, if identity has become a battleground, a skilled therapist can help you reclaim what belongs to you and set down what doesn't. If this episode gave you language, support us with a like so it reaches people who might be carrying the same questions in silence. Subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab for more deep mind stories and grounded knowledge. And turn on the notification bell so new episodes find you, rather than the other way around. In the comments, write "I choose meaning over myth." And, if you're willing, share one sentence about a label you're learning to carry lightly. It will help someone you don't know, I promise. Thank you for spending this time in honest curiosity. Until next time, keep walking your city with the lantern of your attention, and let your symbols be doors you open, not cages you live in.